Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going on a treasure hunt of sorts.
Oh,
We're digging into the concept of value and how it's transformed over time.
sounds fascinating.
You've given us a fascinating mix of sources to explore.
Okay.
Everything from prehistoric times to today's high-flying art market and even the car industry.
Yeah,
Really the whole scope of human history.
yeah. That's quite a journey.
It is going to be a really interesting journey.
I'm excited.
So I'm curious,
Yeah.
how did our earliest ancestors even wrap their heads around value when they were just focused on, not being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger?
It really all boils down to survival.
Survival.
Imagine a world where a sharp flint for making tools or a fire-starting kit
Oh, wow, yeah.
would be the equivalent of winning the lottery today.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's how important some of those things were.
So the value was all about how an object helped you live another day,
Precisely.
another sunrise.
Exactly.
And as humans started living in larger groups,
Right.
then we start to see the beginnings of barter systems.
Yeah.
A skilled hunter, for instance, would be highly sought after because their skill directly impacted the survival of the entire community.
A very valuable member of that community.
Yeah, so instead of just everyone fending for themselves,
Right.
you start to get specialization
Yes.
and trading.
Uh-huh.
I'll give you this extra mammoth meat for that awesome fur cloak you made.
Exactly. And that's a huge step.
Okay.
It's the seed of recognizing that different goods and skills have different values relative to each other.
Okay.
We're talking the very foundation of economics here.
Okay, so we've gone from I need this to survive to I'll trade you this for that.
Right.
What happens when civilization comes into the picture? Agriculture, cities, all that jazz.
Well, with agriculture, you suddenly have the possibility of surplus.
Oh, interesting.
Not everyone has to spend every waking moment hunting or gathering.
Right.
And with that surplus comes the ability to create and acquire things beyond just the bare necessities.
Enter shiny things.
You got it. Think ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia.
Okay.
This is when we start seeing precious metals like
Yeah.
gold and silver being prized, not just for their practicality, but for their beauty and scarcity.
And that scarcity makes them valuable.
Exactly. It's a limited resource,
Okay.
which naturally drives up its perceived value.
Uh-huh.
Plus, it's beautiful, durable, and relatively easy to work with.
Okay.
Perfect for making ornaments, jewelry, and
Status symbols.
yes.
You're saying that's where we start to see value being tied to things that go beyond just utility.
Right. It's a way to store and display wealth,
Okay.
to signal your status within a community. Sound familiar?
Kind of like how people today buy a fancy car or designer clothes.
Precisely, the underlying drivers of value haven't really changed that much, even after thousands of years.
Really?
It's fascinating to see the parallels.
Okay, so early civilizations are into shiny things. What about art?
Sure.
I know religion was a big deal back then.
Absolutely. Think of the pyramids, the temples, the
Yeah.
elaborate tombs.
Yeah.
Art played a huge role in religious and cultural expression,
Right.
and its value was closely tied to its religious significance.
So it's not just about how pretty a sculpture is,
Right.
but also what it represents in terms of beliefs and spirituality.
Right. But at the same time,
Okay.
we also start to see the very beginnings of art being valued for its craftsmanship and aesthetics,
Uh-huh.
separate from its religious purpose.
Interesting. So you have this kind of dual system,
Right.
art as a religious object and art as something to be admired for its own sake.
Exactly.
What happens next in our treasure hunt?
Well, this is where we hit a turning point.
Oh,
The Middle Ages.
okay.
While religion continues to be a driving force behind art patronage.
You've got the rise of guilds, right?
Yeah.
Those groups of artisans who are all about quality control.
Guilds were incredibly powerful.
I can imagine.
They set standards for craftsmanship, regulated prices, and controlled who could even practice a trade.
Oh, wow.
Think of them like the original influencers of the art and craft world.
So if you wanted to be a blacksmith or a weaver,
Wow.
you had to go through the guild system.
That's right.
They decided if your work was good enough
Yep.
and how much you could charge for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were essentially setting the value of a craftsman's work based on skill and adherence to their standards.
Okay.
It's a very different way of thinking about value compared to the scarcity-driven value of gold or the spiritual value of religious art.
It seems like every time we jump ahead in history, the concept of value gets more and more complex.
It certainly does, and it gets even more interesting as we move into the Renaissance. But I think that's a story for part 2.
Yeah.
The Renaissance is often seen as this explosion of creativity and innovation,
Right.
but it also represents a major shift in how we perceive value, especially when it comes to art.
Okay, so we're leaving behind the world of guilds and stepping into what? What makes the Renaissance so different?
Think back to our conversation about ancient art.
Okay.
It was largely driven by religious needs, right?
Yeah.
But in the Renaissance, we start to see a new concept emerge. The artist as individual.
So it's not just about what the art represents,
Right.
but who created it.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Artists like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael,
Yeah, the big names.
these names become synonymous with genius and mastery. Their unique styles, their skills, their personalities, all of these factors start to influence how their art is valued.
It's almost like they became the first celebrity artists.
That's a great way to put it.
Really?
And their fame, their reputation becomes directly tied to the value of their work.
So it's a status symbol almost,
It is in a way.
to have art by a famous artist.
Suddenly, it's not just about the materials used or the subject matter.
Right.
It's about the hand of the master.
Okay, wow.
It changes how people are looking at these pieces.
And then you have these powerful families,
Yes.
like the Medicis, who basically become art influencers.
Yeah, the Medicis are a fascinating case study. Their patronage of the arts played a huge role in shaping the Renaissance art market.
I can imagine.
They understood the power of art to elevate their status, to display their wealth, and to cement their legacy.
So they're commissioning all these incredible works.
Yes.
And that, in turn, drives up the demand for certain artists, which makes their work even more valuable. It's like a feedback loop.
Exactly. And we see echoes of this dynamic even today.
Oh, really?
Think about how celebrities or influencers can drive up the value of certain brands or products just by association.
Wow. So the seeds of influencer marketing were planted way back in the Renaissance. That's mind-blowing.
It's true. And it underscores how intertwined art and value have always been with social status and aspiration.
Okay, but the Renaissance can't last forever, right?
Yep.
What happens next on our journey through the history of value?
Well, buckle up because things are about to get really interesting.
Uh-oh.
We're heading into the Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
And it's going to completely transform the way we think about value production and even our relationship with objects.
You're talking mass production assembly lines, all that.
Exactly. Think about inventions like the printing press, the cotton gin,
Yeah.
the steam engine.
Yeah.
They revolutionized manufacturing and allowed for the creation of goods on a scale never seen before.
So instead of everything being painstakingly made by hand,
Right.
you have machines churning out products.
Exactly.
I can see how that would shake things up.
It creates a fascinating dichotomy.
Okay.
On one hand, you have handcrafted goods that retain their value because of the skill and time invested in their creation.
Like a bespoke suit
Yes.
or a piece of handcrafted furniture.
Precisely. But on the other hand,
Okay.
you have mass-produced goods that offer affordability and accessibility to a much wider population.
Right, because not everyone can afford something that's, made by hand.
That's right.
It's just so expensive.
And that creates a whole new kind of value proposition.
So value becomes less about scarcity and more about efficiency and affordability.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
It's not that handcrafted goods lose their value, but the Industrial Revolution democratizes access to a whole range of products
Oh, okay.
that were previously only available to the elite.
So it's like opening it up to everyone.
Exactly.
And I imagine this is where brands start to play a bigger role.
Yes.
If everyone is making similar products with machines,
Uh,
how do you stand out?
that's a great observation. The Industrial Revolution marks the emergence of brand value.
Okay.
Companies need a way to differentiate themselves in a crowded marketplace.
Okay, let's talk cars.
Sure.
I know the car industry is a great example of how brand value evolved.
Absolutely. In the early days of automobiles,
Yeah.
cars were a luxury.
Like a status symbol?
A symbol of wealth and status. Only the very rich could afford them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But with mass production techniques pioneered by Henry Ford,
Right.
cars became more affordable and accessible to the everyday person.
So instead of a car being a rare and precious object, it becomes, well, a car.
Exactly. But even as cars became more commonplace, brands started to emerge, each representing a different set of values and aspirations.
Like some brands are all about luxury and performance.
Yes.
While others focus on practicality and affordability.
Exactly. And we still see this play out today.
For sure.
The car you drive often says something about your personality, your priorities, your values.
It's funny how even something as seemingly mundane as a car can become so tied up with our sense of self.
Absolutely.
But we're not done yet, right? The 20th and 21st centuries throw even more curveballs at the concept of value.
They certainly do.
Oh, no.
We're about to enter an era of unprecedented consumerism, marketing wizardry, and the rise of the digital age.
I feel like that's where we are now.
It is.
We live in this world.
And that's where things get really interesting.
So we've journeyed from survival essentials in prehistoric times to the rise of brands and mass production.
Right.
What happens to value in the 20th and 21st centuries?
Things get really complex. We're talking about a world of mass media, global trade, and an explosion of consumerism.
It's like everyone is trying to tell you what to value, what to buy, what to aspire to.
It's true.
It's really overwhelming sometimes.
Marketing and advertising become incredibly sophisticated.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Think about celebrity endorsements branding the creation of aspirational lifestyles.
I see it all the time.
They all play a role in shaping our perceptions of what's valuable.
It feels like we've moved even further away from that pure utility value our ancestors started with.
In some ways, yes. But even as marketing tries to influence us, there's a growing awareness of the ethics behind the products we buy.
Right, like fair trade coffee.
Yes.
Or clothing made in sustainable factories.
Exactly. Consumers are becoming more discerning, more aware of the impact their purchases have on the world.
So it's not just about the product itself, but the values it represents.
Precisely. And speaking of values,
Yeah.
we can't forget about the art market.
Oh, right, the art.
In the latter half of the 20th century, art became viewed as a serious investment, a way to store and grow wealth.
It's remarkable how much the art market has changed.
It really had.
In such a short time. Why do you think that is?
Part of it is this financialization of art,
Okay.
but it's also about how galleries, auction houses, and even art advisors shape perceptions of value.
So they're kind of the tastemakers.
They act as gatekeepers, tastemakers, influencing what's considered valuable and desirable.
So it's not just about the art itself anymore, but the whole system around it.
Right. And then, of
Yeah.
course, you have the internet and the digital age,
Of course.
which throw a whole new wrench into the mix.
I can only imagine.
E-commerce makes it easier to compare prices and find deals, while social media constantly bombards us with messages about what we should value and buy.
And then there's the whole world of NFTs,
Yes.
which still feels kind of like the Wild West to me.
NFTs are definitely shaking things up.
I'm still trying to understand them.
Essentially, you're buying ownership of a digital file, which could be anything from a piece of digital art to a virtual trading card.
I have to admit, I still don't quite get the appeal.
Uh-huh.
Why would I pay thousands of dollars for a digital image I can easily download for free?
It's a great question, and it gets to the heart of what we've been talking about.
Okay.
Perceived value. The value of an NFT is often tied to its scarcity, its uniqueness, and the reputation of the creator.
So even in the digital world, scarcity still drives value.
It plays a huge role, plus there's this aspect of community and ownership that appeals to many NFT enthusiasts.
Oh, interesting.
They're not just buying an image, they're buying into a community, a movement, a piece of the future.
It's definitely a new way of thinking about ownership and value.
It is, and it underscores how the concept of value is constantly evolving.
So after this incredible journey through history,
Yeah.
what's the final takeaway? What are value in today's world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It seems like it.
Value today is a complex web of factors. Utility scarcity, quality, brand reputation, aesthetics, social status, emotional connection, ethical considerations, investment, potential cultural significance, and even personal meaning.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. It seems like there's no single answer, no magic formula.
There isn't. It's a constantly shifting dynamic interplay of all these elements, and what's valuable to one person might be completely worthless to another.
So it's really up to each of us to decide what we value and why.
Exactly. The more we understand how value is constructed, the more empowered we are as consumers and participants in the global marketplace.
That's a great point.
We can make more conscious, more critical, and more deliberate choices about the things we surround ourselves with.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive.
It has been fun.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on how value has shaped human history and continues to shape our lives today.
Me too.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this treasure hunt through the ever-evolving world of value.
Thanks for listening.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep discovering what truly holds value for you. You might be surprised at what you find.